in college, I think I really felt like I needed to put my blinders on and just spend all my time in a practice room. And I think in some ways that was a good thing, and that really helped me get places I wanted to go. And then in other ways, I think I do wish that I had taken more classes at Oberlin College, and I wish that I had gotten involved with broader things earlier on.
I've been following along with today's guest ever since she started writing for the website auditioncafe.com, and I really had a great time chatting with her for the show today. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking today with Andrea Beyer, who is a bassist, teacher, and advocate for social growth. She recently finished up 3 years with the New World Symphony, and she just relocated to Austin, Texas. So she started blogging for auditioncafe.com right around when the pandemic hit, which is an interesting time for sure to be writing about auditions, which are not happening now. So we talk about that, how she's been handling the pandemic, the way that blogging has actually given her a chance to connect with some of her colleagues and musicians in the wider world. So a little bit of silver lining there for this current situation. And also just about her super interesting background. She has traveled all over the place and worked with all sorts of different organizations. She's been to Mexico, El Salvador, Uruguay, Bolivia, many other countries, and we have a lot of people that we know in common from those trips, so you're going to hear about that. Her work with MusAid, the MusAid Organization, and much more. So links to everything are in the show notes, and I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Andrea Beyer. Are you in Baltimore, or are you in...
No, I just moved to Austin. So yeah, I just finished at New World in May.
Well, normally Austin would be like, this is a pretty rough time of year in terms of heat. But if you're coming from Miami, it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, it's a different version of hot, but about the same.
What a cool, I've only been to Austin once. It was a little over a year ago. My wife and I was doing a couple clinics at TMEA in San Antonio, and we just made she's from Austin, and so, but then grew up in New Mexico. So we just did a little road trip and hung out on 6th Street, and we stayed on like the eastern side of 6th Street, like east of the interstate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool hip neighborhood.
Yes, hip it is. Yeah, it was just my style, so I understand why it's such a popular destination. That's great. I'm just curious, why Austin?
So when New World, of course, is a 3-year fellowship, my husband and I knew that we didn't want to stay in Miami. Just like not really our scene. It's not a great place for freelancing, or I don't know, just couldn't see ourselves there long term. So we started kind of like city shopping and just going through a list of cities, brainstorming what would be good for both of us career-wise and what would also just be a cool place to live. And Austin was what we came up with. So, because my husband is a musician, but working in tech now. And this is a big, like, up-and-coming tech hub. And there's tons of music here. Of course, Texas is also set up pretty well for teaching.
Yeah.
Like, they have a lot of funding for teaching through the school systems. And it just seemed like a good option for both of us. And then on top of that, we've both spent enough time in really cold weather places that we don't really want to do that. If we're just picking anywhere to go, we'd rather avoid shoveling snow.
Oh, yeah. Where's your husband from?
He grew up all over the place because his dad worked for UNICEF.
Oh,
but
wow.
he was born in Thailand and went to Interlochen and Indiana grad school at Yale.
Okay.
So
Okay, so that's legit winter. That New Haven and then like Interlaken. That Michigan isn't fooling around with its winters. I hear you on the winter thing. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So about 3 hours west of Minneapolis, and then I spent 20 some years in Chicago, and then my wife got a job out here in San Francisco, and I've gotten so soft so fast. Like I go occasionally. I do a lot of conferences and that kind of thing. And so I'll find myself in Chicago in December or somewhere. And I'm such a wimp. I gave away my winter coat. So I've just got this like little pea coat. But yeah, I'm done with shoveling. I don't ever want to dig my car out again.
Yeah. So now people are complaining about the heat here. It's been like in the hundreds the last couple of days, but I'd much rather just stifle through that than have to dig out my car.
Oh yeah, no, I 100%. That's funny. And also, that seems like a great place for. I mean, because what a great tech hub that is becoming. It was amazing to walk around downtown and like as you head toward the river, it's just like all new construction. I don't remember exactly where we were, but I think it was like the southwestern part of downtown, and it was like a whole new city. It looked like. And then it seems like there's so much music around there. Like obviously in Austin, and you got the symphony, but you got all sorts of things. You're not too far away from, I mean, there's just a lot of work, it seems. And then, like you're saying, the teaching thing is incredible. I mean, Texas is like, it's a whole other ball game. Like I was in Dallas for an event a couple of years ago, and I did a little tour with one of the string shops up there, and we went to Allen, Texas, and went to Allen High School, and the music facility is like larger than what Northwestern had, and it's a high school. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it seems like I haven't been to any of the schools yet, of course, but looking at pictures online, there are these huge campuses and like regional orchestras in the area play at the high schools because their auditoriums are so nice. And it does sound like there's a lot of like small regional stuff happening. And then in Austin, not classical music, but when I was here to visit last August, seemed like anywhere you walk in off the street, like bars, coffee shops, everything, there's live music happening.
Yeah.
So of course it might be a little while before we see that again, but that was the idea when we moving here.
Well, luckily, that would be the case anywhere in the world you were right now. So that's the one solace I can have. Because like me too, like here in San Francisco, I mean, I'm sort of realizing the disadvantage to living like right in a major city. I sort of wish I've always loved living in cities, but I sort of wish I wasn't so cramped in with everybody else at the present moment. But yeah, it's Austin. Austin has a lot of the things that made me so attracted to San Francisco, and then also things that I enjoyed in Chicago. So that's cool. Nice pickup places. And there are so many orchestras. There's something of it's like that I don't know what it is. It's like that Texas pride. Every small community they have their football team, they have their marching band, and they're just thriving music program in general. And then they tend to have their orchestra. So there seems to be a lot of really interesting stuff to do around there. That's cool. Yeah,
so I'm excited to be here and excited to start exploring as everything opens up more.
And so we know a lot of people in common, but I was just going through and checking out some of the posts you've been putting out recently, which are great, by the way. And I love that, like, of all the crazy things to do, start writing about auditioning during a global pandemic but I love what you're doing. And I loved seeing Eric Winbeyer, who I remember teaching lessons to Eric when he was like that tall back in Chicago. He would come to summer camps and do things like that. It's been so fun to kind of follow along with him through the years. That was really cool to see you feature him and the other folks from New World.
Oh yeah, his post for Audition Cafe has turned out to be getting to feature my friend.
Yeah,
and just like it's helped me reconnect with people that I haven't talked to in a while, or just like reach out to people that I would like to know better, and just get to feature like the cool things that people are doing, or just like what people are not doing right now, because that's the case. Like you're saying, it's a weird time to start writing about auditioning, and it's, even though it's for the website Audition Cafe, my posts have been almost anti-audition.
Yeah.
I worry, or like the opposite, because I'm like, I'm in the main audience base for that site. Like I'm been out and auditioning and trying to figure things out, and then when I wanted to start putting some content out, I was really just thinking about like what do musicians like me need right now, or like what do I need?
Mm-hmm.
What am I looking for now? And it's definitely not audition advice, if I'm being honest. It's like sit and try to pound through excerpts, but would like to know how other musicians are dealing with this time, and would like to know like what other people are working on, because I'm having trouble figuring out how to keep myself practicing and moving forwards. And that's really been my intent with that.
Well, so I'm curious, what have you been working on? Because that I've been asking myself the same question. I am the audition trail is a distant memory for me. Something in the early, I remember it was like, I think it was the George W. Bush administration early on, probably was like about, kind of when I was taking auditions really seriously. But so like, what, like, are you digging into the snake from Mozart 35, for 2 hours a day, or like how are you spending your time on the bass? And obviously we can talk about all other ways you're spending your time too, but how has your practicing been since this is all broken out?
I mean, to be honest, it's been pretty all over the place, and kind of going, like, I'm sure you've seen things online about like Corona emotional roller coaster, and I feel like my practice habits have been on their own roller coaster of like periods of being pretty productive, and periods of having a lot of trouble sitting down with the bass. But I guess been going through cycles of like a lot of technique work, because I have had some injury issues in the past 2 years that with New World schedule were kind of hard to fully address. So I did feel like with my playing, I was putting band-aids on things with my setup, and just like the way that my body relates to the bass, and trying to just kind of manage while playing on a full-time orchestra schedule and taking auditions. So I do feel like this time has given me the ability to step back and really kind of like retrain my setup to be healthier for me. And I've also been just looking at some pieces of music that I've had on the back burner, that I've just had in mind and haven't had a chance to look at. So right now I'm working on an unaccompanied solo piece by Simon Garcia, who is a great current Spanish composer. And I've worked through a few of his things before, bought some of his parts when I was living overseas and didn't have many people to play with. So bought some of his unaccompanied pieces to work through. And now I'm just started a new one of his for the first time, and planning on recording that for the Bassworks faculty recital about a week from now.
Oh.
So that's given me, a deadline, which is helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Simone, what a great composer and great person. And I don't know if you've had a chance to spend any time with him during your travels or met him, but he's just all good things. What I can't say enough good things about him, and I love the way he writes for the bass. It's such a catchy. Like you, I mean, it's got to be particularly challenging, I would think, for you or somebody in your shoes, because you're like, or I would guess, like, being in New Orleans world, for most, that there's this very focused goal, right? Now people do all sorts of things out of there, obviously, but certainly taking orchestral auditions, I mean, it's kind of the point, or one of the big points. It's been interesting. It's been interesting for me trying to figure out, I theoretically am supposed to play a solo concert in Dallas in December, which I'm fully expecting to get canceled, right? 100, but if I don't have a program, I'm in trouble. So I'm just assuming, or maybe it'll be online, or maybe it won't happen, whatever. But I started to work toward that, but it's been pretty funky. I think it must be even funkier when you're thinking about something like auditions and you're just, you open up International Musician and it's just nothing but cancellations in the last few pages. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a weird time. And we went into lockdown like 2 days after I came back from an audition, actually. So I took the audition in Nashville, came back and was kind of in that like post audition funk, like taking a few days off, and then New World announced that it was shutting down. And so that it was a really weird headspace to be in, because even though I think you're right about New World being very like audition, and it does give you resources and support to do a lot of other things. And I've really tried to take advantage of that. And that was some of my favorite things about being there, with doing these other projects. But still, in the month leading up to an audition, of course, you're like, that's all that's on your mind. So going from that and then suddenly being totally locked down was a pretty weird like shift of headspace. And
yeah, I can imagine. Well, and I subbed in New World a little bit, like in the late '90s, and I think I actually have an old friend from Chicago who was in New World the very first year it existed, and so it seems like they've really changed just what they offer, and the community engagement is such a bigger part of it. I remember chatting with Jory Herman, who's in Los Angeles Philharmonic. For people listening, I guess we started, by the way, but I never have any plan for these, but I do have people that go through and edit. So I just like to think of these as like if we were just hanging out. So, but feel free to restate or anything, and it's not. So sorry, 20 minutes in, I'll give you that. But so Jory Herman, he's done so much. But in both, when he was in the San Diego Symphony, he was involved with this program Art of Ilan, and now in LA Phil, he's doing a lot too, and he traces that right back to everything he did in New World. He kind of caught the community engagement bug, he said, which it seems like you kind of have too, and I think that's super cool, and I just love that New World is instilling that in so many people, or people are getting inspired to do that, because I'm really digging what you're doing and what I've seen so far, and I just can't wait to see how your career unfolds, certainly post-pandemic, but even right now with all the writing and everything. So yeah, was it New World that kind of got you into community engagement, or had you like back in Oberlin or Yale, like had you thought about, had that been an interest of yours?
Yeah, it started out by getting kind of bit by the travel bug. So the summer between my junior and senior years at Oberlin, I did a tour with YOA, which I think is now just called Orchestra of the Americas. But so that summer program runs just like a festival, but they take auditions from all over North and South America, and they really try to piece together this orchestra of representatives from as many countries as possible. And every summer they tour a different area. So that year we went to Chile, spent a month in Chile, and I'd never been to South America before. Never spent a whole month out of the country, and was just so inspired by all of the musicians that I was working with. And I think before that, I had really been in this mindset of like, I am on a track to play the bass as well as I can and try to do that for the rest of my life. And then I had this kind of quarter life crisis because of this summer where I went and saw all these musicians from all over the place that were doing really cool things with the rest of their time, and were also not seeming to be just set on one track, and were moving all over the place. And it just really opened my mind, like my eyes, to what was possible, which was weird timing going into your senior year of college, because I had been fully set on just like applying for a ton of grad schools, and then I became pretty unsure about what I wanted to do after that, and started looking into a lot of El Sistema kind of programs. And that year was the very first year of YOA's Global Leaders program, which at that point looked very different than it does now, I think. But it was just a year of like online, then it was Skype seminars and some little teaching trips where so I went to Mexico twice to work with a Sistema program in Puebla, Mexico. And that just kind of changed everything for me. And I realized how much I love working with people in that setting. And I did start teaching myself a lot of Spanish, and had very, very patient students and colleagues in Mexico for the 2 short trips that I was there, who helped me learn a lot of Spanish. And yeah, just I realized how much I love teaching in a social setting, and I think just became a lot more adventurous, maybe realizing how much a language barrier doesn't matter to teach music, which was really, really exciting realization, because I have always loved to travel, and just realized how much music could be a kind of a catalyst for traveling, and a catalyst for doing this other kind of social work that's really rewarding. So after that year, the following summer, I went to YOA again, and that summer was a tour of Central America. And then I think my first week, I did end up going to grad school the following year. Went to Yale to study with Don Palma, and loved working with him, but was also kind of had these thoughts in the back of my mind that I would love to travel, and I would love to be more kind of socially involved with my music. And so the first week at Yale, before an orchestra rehearsal, just wound up talking to a guy who was also just starting there, and was running this really small nonprofit called MusAid that had also just been in Central America doing a teaching trip. And following summer to El Salvador for 2 weeks to work with El Sistema El Salvador. And then actually wound up dating, and am now married to the the musician who started that. And so after we finished graduate school, we did end up spending about a year and a half overseas teaching at different programs.
I've got a quick question just about Yale, because it seems to me, and I've spoken with a lot of people that have gone to Yale and studied with Don Palma, and it seems to me that while a lot of people do go on and win orchestra jobs or whatever, there are so many people doing really diverse things coming out of there, like Sam Suggs, so I don't know if you overlapped with it all, but he's a great example, now teaching, but also fabulous composer, and just really just like interesting musician, you know. And I just chatted with somebody. Well, it seems like what was that environment like? Maybe Yale in general, or Don, because it just seems like a lot of people kind of branch out in interesting ways after their experience there.
I think it's not an incredibly orchestral driven school in general, the way that maybe like Rice, of course, would be, or a lot of other like really high level music programs. I think Yale does get a pretty big mix of people there, maybe because of their scholarship situation. And I think that Don has something to do with it because his career is so diverse. He was a huge freelancer in New York and spent just 1 year in the LA Phil, I think, and then went back to New York because it wasn't for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like first call sub with the Met for a long time, but also one of the founding members of Orpheus, and is also conducting now. And so I think you don't necessarily seek him out because you want to only work on your excerpts the way that you might bass teachers.
Yeah. No. It makes sense. I've a good friend of mine. I've known her for 20 years almost at this point. Kate Nettleman, who's in the Minnesota Orchestra now. She studied with Don at Yale after Juilliard, and just great memories. And I'm always interested in, and that makes sense. The non-orchestral focus. I can see how that propels people in different directions. It's funny because I was teaching a camp in Spain last year, maybe a little over a year ago, and it made me both realize how desperately I needed to learn Spanish, because I keep on ending up also in Mexico or places, but also, like you were saying, that universality of playing, and how, it would be nice to get more Spanish. And I'm on day 624 of Spanish Duolingo. I know that doesn't do that much probably, but it does more than nothing. Next time I go to Spain, I'll have a little more under my belt. But yeah, it's really interesting how much you can communicate. People say that as music, the universal language, but boy, I remember doing working with a bass quartet from Mexico City, and one person could kind of speak English, and that was it. But it was amazing how much we got done. They probably as good a rehearsal as somebody if we were all fluent in the same language. It might have been a little different, a little more demonstration or this, but it's just remarkable.
Yeah, I found that. I did start teaching in Spanish-speaking places pretty early in my teaching experience, but I found that it really helped me because I think it made me a much more efficient teacher, because I realized that it's often better to just demonstrate, and you can do that in almost no words, and just say, like, you're doing it like this, let's try it like this. And then it's really clear. It's amazing how quickly people pick that up versus going through like elaborate metaphors and, trying to explain how things work.
Sometimes you cut through. Yeah, language is a beautiful thing, but it can be, we can overuse it as music teachers, for sure.
I was going to share a language barrier story.
Please.
One of my favorite examples of this. So during the year and a half between finishing school and ending up at New World, I was in Palestine for 6 months teaching, and started learning a little bit of Arabic when I was there, but really all my teaching was in English. And my students had a variety of ages and English ability. So I had one Wajd, who I think was like 10 years old, spoke a little bit of English, but not too much. And I was trying to explain to her like the concept of using your weight and just like relaxing your right arm. It's like, probably one of the first lessons that all of us have had. And that's a really abstract thing if you've never heard about it before, like this idea of like using but activating the weight in your arm, and just trying to get her to relax and like trying all these things and saying things. And then I just sang the line from Frozen, like Let It Go. And she just got it in a second. Like we've been trying for like 20 minutes, and just like sing a Disney song, and then like instant understanding. So
that's funny. Yeah. Sometimes those simple things, that's great. I've certainly been there. I was curious about the El Sistema program that you were doing in Montevideo, right?
Yeah, so I spent about 4 months in Montevideo, Uruguay,
Mm-hmm.
at their Sistema program. So they have this big government-funded network of youth orchestras that are their kind of flagship orchestra is in Montevideo, and then they have all these little nucleos all over the country in the little towns. And my now husband and I really wanted to spend some time in a Spanish speaking place. So we contacted probably 80 schools saying that we would get ourselves there and teach or do whatever we could do that they might need help with if they could provide us with a place to live and just like enough to live on. So the program in Montevideo came through, and we went down there for a few months and did I guess I was doing some orchestra sectionals, and they have a huge bass section in their main orchestra. I think about 20 people who had been playing for a while, and we're also teaching in a nucleus, because that's a lot of the El Sistema model is that once you reach a certain level, you start to teach the the beginners, and even on a smaller level, if you know 4 notes, then you can teach the kid who only knows 3 notes what that other note is, and it's a very like kind of communal form of learning and teaching. And then I also taught in a few of the nucleos, which were just in these little farm towns. So I think less than 4 million people, and I think about 12 million cows is the population statistic. So outside of Montevideo, all of the towns are very small. And so I was teaching lessons in these little farm buildings where we'd go in, and the organizer for that nucleo would light a fire in the fireplace, and then we'd have our bass lessons. And one of them, there's a little farm dog that would always come in and kind of hang out, and really cool experience.
Oh yeah, that's such a. I could picture it there. And all the cows is so funny. There's a reason why my friends from Uruguay or Argentina are so into steak. You know, I mean, there's definitely a connection there.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you ever a friend of mine, Diego Zacharias, is from Montevideo, and I know that he lives in Spain. Actually, teaches in the and plays in Galicia. I think it's with the right. And I know he teaches a lot of lessons to people in Montevideo, bass players, and he has a bass class that he runs. In fact, I don't think he teaches anyone in Spain. I think it's only people in Uruguay. But yeah, what a cool experience.
Yeah, I did meet him once. He was there for about a week, I think, when I was there. And yeah, it's clear that everyone in that orchestra bass section really sees him as like a father figure, or they really look up to him, and we're just so excited when he was coming into town, and really cool to see him working with the students there. And he also did a recital, which is how I first heard of Simon Garcia. So he played a lot of his work. So, and just amazing musician. And
there's no pleasure quite like watching Diego teach a masterclass in Spanish. You know, I was in Tijuana, and I watched him for day. You know, we hung out and we're playing together, and then in Simone's music, he's a champion of Simone's music. They actually live, practically next door to each other. But yeah, two great people, and I know that there's Diego every few years organizes a bass festival in Montevideo. So hey, maybe you and I will both find ourselves there in coming years.
That'd be great.
I'm curious. Had you done a lot of writing before you took over the Audition Cafe site? I love your style of writing and what you're doing. So I'm just curious, is that something that have you been into writing for a long period of time, or is that like a newer thing, or how did that come to be for you?
Yeah, I really haven't done a lot of writing. I've been, since at New World, I've been trying to do some more other creative things in terms of like concert planning. So I have done a little bit of script writing for two concerts that I put together at New World, um, but I haven't done a lot of writing. And then once New World went into lockdown, um, and I was just, I guess, kind of craving some kind of creative project, this audition, and not wanting to, or not knowing what to practice. Just started, I don't know, just started thinking about writing and really wanting to connect with other musicians during that time, especially. It was so jarring, I think everyone was feeling so instantly disconnected from the world because we were all hiding out at home and not sure what was going to happen. So, and fortunately had access to a platform to make it reach a few more people than if I just did it on my own.
Well, I think it's great. I love what you're doing. I hope you keep it up. Thank you for asking me. It's funny because I remember writing a few posts for Audition Cafe like back in the day, not that long ago, I guess a few years ago. But and then I was thinking like, my goodness, what a weird time to write about auditioning. But I think it's great what you're doing. I love how you're profiling people, and then I think it's really positive, and I think it's a good. Folks who are listening who may not have checked out the site, I'll obviously link to it as well as your site and social and everything. But check it out. It's really it'll if you wake like you were describing. You know, I have my good days and not so good days during this pandemic. I'm getting a little sick of being stuck at home, I got to say, and all the uncertainty and everything else. Obviously, it's a rough time for the world on multiple levels. But I love what you're doing. And I don't know about for you, but for me, when I start to get into writing, I almost feel like writing helps me think better. Like once I actually get it down, it's not my favorite thing to do necessarily. Like I think I would rather like watch Netflix or maybe even practice. But once I get into it, it's always time well spent. I mean, how has it been for you as you've written more and more? Do you look forward to it? Is it challenging? Is it it must be satisfying because you keep doing it, but what's it been like as you've done more and more?
It definitely has gotten easier. Like I've found putting the post together has become less time consuming for sure than it was in the very beginning of this. So yeah, I have been enjoying it, and I think I did especially enjoy it at the beginning because I just needed some kind of creative outlet, and this was giving me a way to, like I said, like connect with people who I hadn't been in touch with in a while, and hearing what other people are up to or how other people were feeling really inspired me also. So it kind of helped me figure out what to do with myself during this time, and writing about or like putting together other people's words for in the case of the interviews, and writing about different projects that people have been doing kind of pushed me forward with the writing, because I would see what they're doing, start to write about it, get really excited, and then want to keep going with my own thing, either writing or so I think I have slowed down a little bit now since I moved, because I'm also trying to piece together a new career here, and needing to designate more time to everything that goes into that. So I'm not putting out as much as often as I was in the beginning of the pandemic. But I'm really glad to hear that you're enjoying the site and enjoying the post, because what you're saying is that was really my goal for it, to have something light for musicians right now who are looking for inspiration from other musicians.
Yeah, no, I love what you're doing. I appreciate you asking me to write something up. It gave me a chance to write about some of my favorite apps, which I always love to geek out about. And yeah, it's for, I don't know if you've experienced this, but for me, like doing the podcast, I think the podcast for me, or writing or anything, it's kind of like a byproduct of something that I should be doing anyway. It's kind of like working out, like doing research, chatting with new people, learning about new things. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I've said this way too often on the podcast, but I could just lie and say I had a podcast and I would get the benefit. Like it's cool to hang out and learn about what you're doing and where you've been. And I wish you all the best in Austin, and hopefully we get a chance to spend some time together in person when things like that are possible again, whether in Austin or here in San Francisco or down in Montevideo or who knows?
Yeah, I hope so. And I loved your article for the site also. I think that's really helpful for people right now looking for things to do or looking for structure their time. And I totally agree with like you're saying about podcasting, kind of not forcing you, but like opening you up to the things that you would be doing anyway. Mm-hmm. I've definitely felt like that with these blog posts of researching different people and reaching out to people that are really active or doing interesting things right now. And especially in the last couple of weeks, it's made me look closer into like racial issues of everything going on in the US. And, I should have already been looking up more composers of color that I could be programming or I could be performing, but I guess because nothing had specifically pushed me the way that, things don't happen when you're busy, wanting to write about that or include that in something to share to other people made me educate myself about it. Mm-hmm. And I did in one of our newsletters kind of make a little pledge to try to feature more musicians of color in the interviews that we're doing. And that's something that's really important to me to do in general, because now I'm looking beyond. I think I started by looking at people that I know or am connected to, and now I'm looking much broader and hoping that in the next couple months with these blog posts and inviting different guest writers or interviewing guest people that I'll really get to know a lot more people than I have already.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've been thinking about similar topics as well. And fellow Yale graduate, actually, Ross Whiteman, I'm forgetting if it's Whitman or Whiteman, but Whitman, maybe. Sorry, Ross, I've totally butchered your name. But I chatted with him a couple weeks ago, and I'll get that out pretty quick here, about this Black Composers Initiative that he started and he's raised. The last time I checked, it was over $6,000, probably way over that at this point. And he and I were chatting, and I was thinking about that. I was thinking like how many composers of color, or where I'm talking about Black composers, and I was thinking, well, I've been working on this piece by Xavier Foley, and one of the last people I've seen in person. He was out here in San Francisco right before the pandemic hit, but I had to rack my brain to think about it. So it's great to see that and many other things, start to, if we're just talking in our bass lane, to see more support for composers of color. And, I'll look forward to that. Well, I love what you do. I'll link up to everything. I did throw my traditional question to you in the email, which is the only thing I ever ask. And, which I don't always ask, but and you're still, you got a lot of life ahead of you, I'm sure. But if you go back to like when you could pick the age, but like 17, 18, something like that. What piece of advice might you give yourself now with all these experiences under your belt?
Yeah, I am glad that you sent that. I was thinking about that this morning. I think looking back, if I could give my younger self any advice, it would be just how broad the music world can be. It would be to keep that in mind, and because I think when I was younger, especially like early days of undergrad, even though I did grow up as like a pretty, one of those like stereotypical suburban, well-rounded kids that went to soccer practice and played piano and did, I always interested in a lot of things. But then in college, I think I really felt like I needed to put my blinders on and just spend all my time in a practice room. And I think in some ways that was a good thing, and that really helped me get places I wanted to go. And then in other ways, I think I do wish that I had taken more classes at Oberlin College, and I wish that I had gotten involved with broader things earlier on, because now I am still interested in a million different things, and I am hoping to do a million different things. And I would love the orchestra job, and but part of the reason I would love that is because I think it would give me the stability and the credibility as a titled player to be able to go do all this other stuff that I love to do, like traveling and teaching and working with socially driven programs, and just really having an opportunity to get to know all kinds of people and music that a lot of, especially young people, don't realize or just aren't aware of or aren't open to, because we're just thinking about the job, whatever that means. And I think that will be changing now also, or I think it's always changing.
Yeah, well, we're certainly having a good shakeup of priorities. So, yeah, I think that's probably changed for a lot of you. But I can't wait to see what you continue to do. And and let's please have this be the first of many. I think Danny Zeman holds the record for. I think he's been on the podcast 7 times. Let's chat again. I'd absolutely love that.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I just shut off the recorder when I forgot that I was going to ask Andrea about MusAid, this very cool program that she's been involved with. So here's Andrea on MusAid.
So MusAid is a small nonprofit just run by this team of 4 of us that are scattered. But it started out with the intention of just collecting donated instruments to send to musicians in places that have trouble accessing resources. And then over time, it's developed into teaching artist training that happens simultaneously with teaching at these schools. We have partner schools in, our biggest one is in El Salvador with El Sistema El Salvador. And recently have also worked with a program in Calcutta, India with the National Symphony there. And we've also done projects in the Philippines, Belize, Bolivia. They've sent donations to Afghanistan and Haiti. It's really cool. We bring in a group of teaching artists from mostly the US and Europe and do a couple of days of really intensive teacher training in the host country. And then we'll do 2 weeks of like on-site teaching artists development while working with the students at these partner schools. So it's so cool to get to see the teaching artists. Some of them have never left the country before, get to come to these countries and like really get to know their students and get to experience the country in a really authentic way.
Andrea, thanks for chatting. Folks, links to everything, her website, auditioncafe.com, and all the articles she's written, well, some of the articles that she's written are linked up to in the show notes. Follow her on Instagram. That's all linked up there as well. And I can't wait to connect with her again. Thank you, Andrea. It's so much fun for me to connect with people that are in different stages of their career, whether they've gotten done with a program like New World Symphony or maybe graduate school, or it's fun to connect with people who are earlier in their journey. You're going to be hearing from another guest coming up soon who just finished her freshman year of college. So that's always interesting to me. I love talking to people that pick up the bass in their 60s and what that experience has been like. I had Stuart Pierce on the podcast several years ago at this point to talk about that. We will do a round 2 in the future. So it's fun for me to connect with people from different places around the globe, different walks of life, different interests. And I think Andrea is doing great work. And it's just really in the spirit of what I try to do here. So thank you, Andrea. And thanks for having me write for the site. And thank you for listening to the podcast. This podcast has been kicking my butt this week. I sit down. If anybody gets to the end here, I sort of assume that you're a little bit more in the club if you have listened and now you're still with me. So I sit down every 2 weeks these days. I'll just share a little bit of the process. And I try to do 4 episodes in that one day. So that I've been putting out 2 episodes a week for years, which is insane. Don't ever do that if you start a podcast. Well, do what you want to do, but it's a lot of work. And thank you to the team, who I'll thank in a second, for doing all of that. And that just seems to work better for my life. Even though I'm not traveling at all, I still wear a lot of different hats and have a lot of different irons in the fire and different projects. So I try to put this editing hat on, the stuff that Jason has to do besides talking with people. I try to do that once every 2 weeks, and it takes the whole stinking day. And I got a new MacBook Pro, a 2020 16-inch, which I love. I'm on that's the video editing, Adobe Audition, doing this outro right now on it. And it's so nice to have the screen real estate. I can actually see my editing software and my notes about my guest without having to flip back and forth. But, there's always a switching cost when you move to new gear, and it just slowed me down. And I just ran out of time yesterday. So it's the next day, which is very rare. It's Friday morning. I'm trying to save Fridays these days for doing stuff I didn't get to in the rest of the week. I've been toying around with, ever since the pandemic hit, with different week schedule setups in general. What I've been doing recently, I guess I'm sharing this with you apparently here at the end. I'm trying to not edit these outros, and I haven't yet, so we'll see if I can keep that up. But what I've been trying to do more recently, last 6 months or whatever, whenever the pandemic started, is I take the weekends off unless there's some real reason not to. I think it helps me focus better. I spend time with my wife, who has a more normal job. And then I've been trying to have Monday be like an overview day where I just sort of, I don't obligate myself to any one project. I just sort of think about what I should be spending my time on. That sort of manager role. I'm like the manager of Jason, and Jason is also the worker. So right now I am very much in worker mode, but manager Jason told worker Jason to do this today. And so Monday I've been taking to do that. I don't try to dive right into any specific project, any hat that I'm wearing. I try, if possible, don't always follow these rules, to have Monday be like an overview day. And then I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday be very specific different hats. So these days, and these have changed throughout the pandemic and will certainly change getting into the fall here, but I have one day where I am content creator. And that means I'm shooting videos, or I'm writing, or I'm doing something that's not tied to any other organization. It's just my stuff that may find its way to YouTube. It might find its way onto my blog. It was time I allotted for that Audition Cafe post that we talked about. And so Tuesday has been that day, and these days can change. This is just what I've been doing. Wednesday is my work with Eastman Strings. That's something that I spend a lot of time doing, and I enjoy it very much. I love the team there, and I just really enjoy my role there. So I've been trying to have Wednesday, and I kind of do a little bit of this stuff. I can't help but have it happen, in other days, but it's as if I'm going to a full-time job for one of these things. So I am full-time content creator on Tuesday. I'm full-time working for Eastman on Wednesday. Thursday is my podcast day, and that's when I reach out to people for interviews, I say, hey, great, let's do Thursday. If it doesn't work this Thursday, next Thursday. And I break these rules sometimes, but I try to do that. If I sit down and break up the gear, I'm going to really use that gear. And so then every couple of weeks, Thursday is the day that I also edit and do all the stuff on the podcast. So that's just a little bit about what I've been up to. I've been thinking about writing a blog post on that or doing a video on that. And I thought, I don't know if anybody really cares that much, but maybe I will. We'll see. Anyway, regardless, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for getting to the end here. So you are an awesome person, or maybe you're trapped somewhere where you can't get to your hands and switch to a new podcast. Regardless, thank you. Feedback at Contrabass Conversations is the email to get in touch with me. Any guest suggestions or topic suggestions, I love that. Thank you to the team: Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Mitch Mooring, Trevor Jones, and Krista Copper. If you're looking for a bass or work on a bass, Mitch does beautiful work in Kilgore, Texas. That's a little bit east of Dallas, Fort Worth. Thank you to Eric Hochberg for playing that theme music with me, which you're probably hearing at this point. 13 years ago. You rock, sir. And I can't wait to see you and the team and you, the listener, whenever we get to see people again, whenever that happens. So I am Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.